Dim, dam, dalilam, vacarme, s'en va dans l'oubli éternel. Et Gustav.
Welcome back to pixelprojectradio, the video game discussions podcast where we do deep dives and analyze all of our favorite games, and some of yours too. My name is Rick, and today we're finally doing it. We're going through Clair Obscur, Expedition 33. Been talking about this for a while, been very excited to do a full narrative analysis on this show. Up top, I've got to thank the patrons as always. These kind folks believe in the show and keep things moving along with their support. And if you would like to be like these fine individuals, you can head on over to patreon.com/pixelprojectradio to check out what's on offer there. Just did the Mortal Kombat 95 movie that is coming out tomorrow, maybe, on the Patreon, at the time of recording anyway. Stick around to the end of the show. You can hear all about the Patreon, the Discord, and all of those other plugs for myself and for my guest today, joined once again by Thrak from the 3DO podcast. You might remember Thrak from Lost Odyssey and Medieval. Those are two pretty similar games. How's it going, Thrak?
Hi, Rick. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. We're back finally talking about another RPG. So it didn't take 33 tries to do it. It's only the third try. But we're still divisible by 3. So we're good.
That's right. We took a little break from the PS1 cult classics, although I did have a good time talking about Medieval. That was fun. So today is all about Clair Obscur. This game is taking everything by storm, extremely popular. So we're going to jump right in and talk about our personal histories with this game, which I expect will be roughly the same for the two of us. This was on my radar ever since it was announced. Maybe not immediately when it was announced. I remember seeing it at, I think, a State of Play months and months before the release date dropped. Been on my radar since then. I bought it day one, played through it basically every single day, beat it in a couple of weeks, and I'm now, at the time of recording this first episode, into Act 2 of my second playthrough. I've been having a great time. What about you, Thrak? Did you buy this on day one too?
Yeah, well, not buy technically because it was on Game Pass. I had first seen this game on, it was one of the Xbox showcases. It was either 23, 24, I can't remember. They all kind of bleed together, but I remember this was like a really big standout game because everyone was like, oh, this game is like really pretty. Looks really, really cool. And then we saw the gameplay and we're like, this is a turn-based RPG? It's got like Persona-type combat with, like the camera angles and everything that they were showing off. And it was a highlight of that initial showcase where it was shown, and they had mentioned it was coming to Game Pass day one. And whenever they show a game that looks interesting to me and is day one on Game Pass in that regard, I'm like, yeah, might as well, right? I pay for the subscription, I might as well use it. And as we were inching further and further in to this game, the hype was remaining, and it was getting pretty intense. I didn't expect it to do as well as it did. I believe it is still the highest rated game that's released this year. But yeah, it was an exciting game to look at because it looked different. It looked like it was trying to stand out from the other JRPGs that was surrounding it at the time. And I think it succeeded at that.
And just keeping things at a high level, did this hold up for you as you played through it?
Yes. So I did download it day one and start playing it. But I ran into a little personal issue, and that was, as I was playing it, I got kind of sick. And so I had to put it down for a little bit to kind of recover. So for a little bit of time, I wasn't playing the game because when I'm like really sick and dealing with stuff, I don't really want to play story-based games because you need to pay attention, and I just couldn't.
Sure.
But I eventually was able to get back into it and finally did beat it. I saw it all the way through, and I'm really glad that I did, that I stuck it out. I was very close to dropping it only because just, how sometimes you really get into a game, you start playing it, and then things happen, and, you kind of end up doing other things. But I was like, no, this game is like really good. I want to give it its credit because it was like, it's an indie team. It's their first game. I wanted to give it the attention it deserves. So I'm really glad that I did because it was well worth the journey.
And that seems to be the consensus. Everybody that I've talked to personally has been very glad that they saw it through. I've seen a few negative reviews online, but we can talk about maybe what some folks might not like. When I finished this, I had similar feelings as to when I first finished Disco Elysium and more recently 1000 Times Resist. And I wanted to hold on to that. I noted that feeling and I kept it in the back of my mind, but I wanted to hold off to make sure that it wasn't the hype that was sort of influencing me. I think a lot of us say that we're immune to that. We don't take it into account, but everybody does to a certain extent, whether you know it or not. We're group animals in that way. But I wanted to let time pass, and I did. And I still feel that way. I genuinely feel like this is going to be a generational JRPG. Generational insofar as, this console generation. I think people will be talking about this for years to come. It's narratively very focused. It has fantastic visual design and audio design, and it deals with a lot of very human issues. We've been doing so many games on the show recently about grief in some way or another, and this is no exception. I really believe in this game, and I'm glad that it is getting the extreme amount of praise that it has been. I think it's very well deserved.
Yeah, it is a example of like an indie hit, because it feels like the last however many years now, it's like any game that kind of like breaks out and becomes a hit is usually like an indie game because it's not bound to sort of the corporate AAA structure. It can just kind of be whatever it wants to be. And I think people really like that. And yeah, this game, I agree. It's as far as like being a generational game. Like if you think about the PS5 series generation, people have talked about like the lack of like good games, I guess, to an extent, or it feels like gaming is in kind of a weird spot right now. And I think that is true, but there are still games like this one that can get released and still like kind of organically catch on and find an audience and potentially become a franchise. A part of me doesn't want it to be, but we can talk about that later.
Oh, a big part of me wants it to not be a franchise or have DLC or sequels. Let it breathe and exist on its own,
To me, it was when they said they were going to be doing a film adaptation, which I'm like, it makes sense in that regard. Like, maybe we can discuss it later, but it's the idea of like, does this game need a sequel? Like I've been pondering that quite a bit since I beat the game, and I don't think it really needs one. I don't know. What do you think?
Let's table that discussion for now. I'm
fine with that.
Let's talk a little bit more about what this game is. If you're not familiar with Clair Obscur, this is a turn-based RPG set in a fictionalized world called Lumiere. It's vaguely reminiscent, well, not vaguely, it's pretty reminiscent of France. And the gist is this group of individuals known as the Expedition 33, are setting off to take down this godlike deity known as the Paintress. It sounds very paint by the numbers whenever you put it this way, but they do a lot of unique and personalized spins on that classic JRPG formula that we're going to talk about throughout.
Yeah.
If this is your first time coming to the show, which I expect it might be for a lot of you, first of all, welcome. pixelprojectradio, we do critical analyses on various games that we enjoy. What we're going to do is we're going to talk through our broad impressions of Clair Obscur, things like the development, visuals, music, things like that. And then we will get into a beat-by-beat narrative analysis. This is going to take place across 3 episodes. Before we get there, there won't be any spoilers, and as we go through it, we won't have any spoilers for things to come. Stuff in Act 3 will not be spoiled in Act 1, nor will anything in Act 2. Like that. So at any point, if you need to jump off because you aren't far enough or you don't want to be spoiled, you will know what to do and when to do it. But enough about that. Let's talk through the community forum. The community forum is a channel in our Discord server where I post what we're talking about and the community members can share their thoughts. Now, I admit, I posted this a bit late, so I've only got 3 today. If I get any more, I will put them in the 2nd or 3rd episode. But we've got a couple today. First up, we've got John, regular Discord contributor, John with no H, and co-host of the Video Game Lounge, believe his other co-host is Elias, if I'm not mistaken. Here's what John has to say. What happens when you catch lightning in a bottle while making a game that pays homage to some of the greatest JRPGs of all time? You get Clair Obscur, brilliantly blending turn-based combat from Final Fantasies 8, 9, and 10, and games like Legend of Dragoon with an incredible soundtrack, astounding visuals, and a story with as many layers as a bag of onions. Okay. It's truly an unforgettable experience that makes you go wee and woo. Also, huge shout out to the superb voice cast. They really bring the dialogue and story to life.
They do really bring the wheeze and the woos.
Yes,
like
yes,
the Ric Flair.
Now, do you mean the wrestler or do you mean the flair that I bring to the show? Or both?
Let's say both. Yeah, why not?
That's the right answer.
Like that meme. Why not both?
Abs porque no las dos. Yes, John is a fellow Legend of Dragoon enjoyer, and it's no surprise that he called that out. It's funny, I actually have a note on the Legend of Dragoon influence or lack thereof here in a little bit. We've also got Dave from Tales from the Backlog podcast. Here's what Dave says. There's usually just 1 or 2 games a year that completely grab a hold of me and never let go. This year, it's Expedition 33. I could never say everything I want to say in one short blurb, but this is straight up one of the best games I've ever played, and one of the very few games where I deliberately put off finishing the game until I had exhausted all of the optional adventures and boss fights. It's the newest entry in my personal pantheon of great games.
That's high praise.
Yes, yeah. Many are saying this, you know. A lot of what Dave said is echoed in Matt's correspondence, but Matt adds a little spin that I have actually not heard in any of these correspondences yet. Here's what Matt says. This is easily one of my new favorite RPGs and my top 10 games of all time, but I want to praise it for being the game that got my spouse into turn-based RPGs. This was her first one, and she absolutely loved it. She's someone who has always had a passing interest in games and even has several favorites that she's played in recent years, but none this mechanically dense. It gave her the language and touch points to bond with me over something I adore, and that will also make this game and my experience with it even more special. Also, Esquier is best friend-shaped boy.
Oh, I love him. He's the best.
What a millennial thing to say. Esquier is great. That's really touching. I really like hearing whether it's a correspondence in my Discord server or just anecdotes like this, that's very sweet. It's really special that you get to bond with somebody over a shared experience like this, like a game, like a book, like a play. It makes it all the more special, and I'm sure Matt will look back in years to come and just feel all the more fond of their time with this. Absolutely,
and that's really cool that she was able to find an RPG like this that she really liked, you know, because I think there's an RPG for everybody. Right. And I'm glad she was able to find this one for her. You know, whether or not she goes and plays more of them, that's up to her. But, you know, that's great.
As for the development, this was released in April of 2025, on the 24th to be exact, on the PlayStation, the Xbox, and the PC. Thrak, you played this on Xbox, you said, right?
Yes, I played on the Series X through Game Pass because it was day one on Game Pass.
Very nice. I played this on PC. I'm not going to flex that I bought it. I want to support the developers. I don't know what you're thinking, Thrak.
I mean, once I get my financial situation cleared, I do intend to buy a physical copy of this to support the devs. So,
if you can find one, they've been sold out everywhere.
Last time I checked, I saw that like Xbox physicals were still like around. So, I will keep my eyes out.
You can see the full credits for this game on the IMDb on their wiki, or you can beat the game. But of note, it's developed by Sandfall Interactive, their first game, published by Kepler Interactive. You might know Kepler from Cat Quest 3, Sifu, and Thrak. What's the next one on the list?
Hold on, let me... Planet in Vertigigun Canonic Commandant? I was maybe 50% right.
Planeten Vertigigungs Canon Commandant. Sure.
I'm not an English major, so I don't know this.
I love German.
I'm not a German major either.
I've been learning it. I've been having a great time.
That's cool.
That's a to be released game. That's like TBA, I think, for 25 or 26. But okay. That's what Kepler's done. That's directed by Guillaume Broche, who also has a writing credit alongside Jennifer Svedberg-Yen. Art by Nicolas Maxon Francombe. Composer Laurien Testard. We're going to talk more about all of them here in a little bit. This dev team has been really active in giving interviews, and many of them can be found on YouTube and on various news publishing sites. I don't want to parrot their responses this entire time, and there's just, so much information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple of interview links that I have liked into the episode description. That's where I sourced all of this information from, and you can go forth and enjoy them too.
Wasn't there a whole talking point about this game that was like, oh, there was only it was like a really small team or something? Like that was a talking point for this game, was that like it was just like a really small development team. I forget the exact number people were using, but when you get to the game and go to the credits, it's like, I wouldn't call it a small team. Like, it's probably smaller than most AAA games, but there was still a decent amount of people who worked on it, and probably like outsourcing contractors as well.
Precisely so. It's Sandfall as a group is a core team of like 30 some people, maybe even 33. But they did do a fair amount of outsourcing.
Yeah, which is very common for game development.
It is very common. That word leaves a very sour taste in my mouth, given how it's used in my line of work, which very well could be different from the gaming development's line of work. My understanding is one aspect that they outsourced was the battle animations, things like that, which are very slick and very polished.
Yes.
So I am not going to pretend to have all of the insider knowledge and business acumen to talk about all of that. Mm-hmm. My hope is that outsourcing is different in game development than it is in my line of work. Yeah. I hope so. But yes, that myth of it was only made by 30-some people, technically not true.
Yeah. I'm not 100%, I'm not sure about how the outsourcing works either. I mean, on one hand, it's nice to see people like getting work, but you're not sure if it's like other people are losing jobs so these people can get jobs. But my guess is probably, since they're a new indie studio, it's probably not that case, but who knows for sure. Right. But I think if I had to guess, the total number of people who worked on this game was maybe in like the 80s. I think it's under 100 people, which a lot of AAA games I think have like hundreds of people. So it's definitely smaller. Like, it's maybe more on the line of like a AA or even like a single A type of game.
It's also good to talk about that too, because I remember when this narrative first came out that it was made by 30-some people, the first thing that I said, and you could pull it up in the Discord, was, I think I prefaced by saying maybe I'm being too cynical, but that romanticizing of a small team is going to be weaponized, and larger companies are going to just cut their budget. Or not cut their budget, but cut their staff, say make the same kind of thing, but with less people. I would be shocked if that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that was something that concerned me too. And in fact, something that does concern me about this game was the reception to it. Like, yes, it is a very amazing game, and I think it is incredibly well done. But I saw so many people using this game as like a reason to like attack other companies for like not making as good of games. It was kind of similar to Baldur's Gate 3 when that came out, and people were like, oh, like, but this team can make like this really good game. Why can't like this team do this really good game? And it's like, well, there's a lot of different reasons for that, especially if you're going to crap on one of the big publishers for not being able to make a game at the level of an Expedition 33 or Baldur's Gate 3. It's like, should they be able to make those kind of games? Yes, but when we're dealing with the corporate structure, it probably is more challenging to deal with than we realize, kind of a thing. Like, I'm sure BioWare would love to make a game like this, but what's going on behind the scenes with them? Who can say? We don't really know. So it's just like, as much as Expedition 33, as great of a game it is, I don't think we need to use that to belittle other games around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. This game was originally under the codename of Project W, and then later came out as We Lost, and at first had a steampunk Victorian England setting. That's a pet peeve of mine. Steampunk is one of my least favorite aesthetics of all time, and I'm very glad that they ditched that.
That's fair. Steampunk is okay when it's used right. Like BioShock Infinite's kind of a steampunky game, and I like how that looks. But,
yeah.
But I get that, yeah. We Lost, that's a decent title, but it comes off too much like an indie game title. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah, totally. The thematic core of this game, that of grief, of loss, of morose reflection, of the weight of the past. That is a phrase I have not used since Disco Elysium, I don't think. came strongly from both the dev teams past. Jennifer in particular has spoken on a little bit of this in one of the interviews that they did, and because a large portion of this game was built out in its infancy during one of the, at least in recent memory, one of the most recent periods of widespread hopelessness that I think we've ever experienced, that of the COVID pandemic in 2020.
Yes. Oh, yes. It's weird. It feels like it was yesterday and also 30 years ago at the same time.
Yeah, man. That compression of time is getting a little bit absurd.
Yeah, the fact that we're 5 years into this decade just gives me whiplash when I truly think about it.
Guillaume Broche had this idea while working at Ubisoft in 2020. A lot of these folks are former, maybe not a lot, a handful of these folks are former Ubisoft employees. And in 2020, he sent some messages to fellow devs and made some posts on Reddit, back when it was still called We Lost. This led to getting more and more folks involved. Eventually, Kepler got involved as well and got some funding. And just like that, they left Ubisoft to create Sandfall Interactive. First game, monumental first game. This is just like 1,000 Times Resist with Sunset Visitor.
Yeah.
Now, I had mentioned earlier some of the homages. John had mentioned The Legend of Dragoon. Some of the homages in this game were intentional. That's something that gets talked about a lot when discussing Clair Obscur. This game pays tribute to that of the past, to the great JRPGs of the past. It knows the lineage. And indeed, a lot of those were intentional. Things like fixed camera angles, the world map. However, a lot wasn't. A lot was just happenstance. There have been some comparisons to the Final Fantasy X soundtrack I guess I could see, and in particular the Legend of Dragoon combat style, which is also you could also say Super Mario RPG. They did say that was kind of just a coincidence. They did not plan that.
Yeah.
But I think it says a lot that they are so steeped into the genre that they sort of just absorb through osmosis this lineage. And they've created a battle system that is really unique. Another series that really inspired this game is the Souls series, particularly Sekiro. Sekiro was a big inspiration for the parry and dodge mechanics, but you can see influences from FromSoft all throughout this game.
Yeah, it actually leads into some of my issues with the combat system in general. We can talk about that when we get to the combat. But real quick, I wanted to ask you this earlier. We were talking about when they were at Ubisoft. Do you think they pitched this game to Ubisoft?
I mean, I don't think they did.
Okay.
Like factually, I don't think they did, but I can't imagine this would have been something that Ubisoft would have been interested in. That's
fair. If I could ask the devs a question, that would be the one thing. I'm like, did one of you say to somebody at Ubisoft, like, hey, what if we tried something like this? You know, like there's such a big conglomerate anyways that, maybe somebody tried, but who knows? I just like the idea of Ubisoft publishing this and everyone being like, oh, they're actually doing something different for once, but yeah, it's probably for the best. It probably is for the best that it didn't happen, because they probably would have meddled with it. But them working at Ubisoft, I think, explains part of why visually it looks so good. Because I think a lot of Ubisoft games look really nice, at least with what they're able to do with the tech that they have. So
I'm not as familiar. I don't play as many of the Ubisoft games. I can't say one way or the other. There are definitely a few things in here that give off that sort of AAA Ubisoft-like impression when you're playing it. You had mentioned the visuals. Why don't we talk a little bit about those?
Sure.
Really stunning, really beautiful. They do a nice mix of going for the motion capture, the real actors, the realistic graphic fidelity, while still maintaining a sort of fantastical art direction. This is definitely not a quote-unquote realistic game, and intentionally so. It's not made to be.
I do agree, though. I love this game's art style. I think it has one of the most unique art styles of any game, probably this decade, really. You can tell they were really influenced by French and European kind of folklore and art design, and it really comes through to give the game a very unique look. And in some ways, the visuals, this is going to be a weird comparison, but Like, you know how like the Yakuza or like a Dragon series, they're able to sort of mix like really beautiful graphics and nice presentation with kind of like almost like stock or older style like animations. Like they cut corners just to like save money and everything, but they do it so well, everything kind of blends in and fits. And that's kind of like with Expedition 33. Like there are certain things that I see where I'm like, yeah, there's like a corner cut here or there, but it all makes sense and it all kind of fits and is able to help kind of create this amazingly beautiful world. And it just shows the power of like using technology and being able to, you know, mix in old stuff with new stuff. You know, like it's okay if there are some reused animations here or there. It's perfectly fine as long as everything's kind of done with a purpose, you know, and soul. It's got plenty of soul, man.
So you're seeing those corners in the animations?
Like there are certain points where it's like certain like facial animations look kind of rough or things like that, but I mean it's not like it's a detriment or anything. It's just you can tell they were like, oh, this part we can't go crazy on because of like budget reasons, so whatever, like we'll focus on the parts that matter, and the parts that mattered are where it really shines.
It's funny that you said that. You were the first person to agree with me that there is some wonkiness going on there. I had mentioned this elsewhere, and somebody else said, well, I disagree entirely. I think it's so subtle. And it's like, it is, but here, okay, so here's the thing. Bright lights cast long shadows. Yeah. That's exactly what I wrote here. It is clear at times when the motion capture tech cannot keep up with the actor it is tracking.
Yeah.
It just cannot keep up. Particularly, you see this in the face. And in particular, not just the eyes, but around the eyes. I'm talking, yes, the eyes a little bit, but I'm talking the brow and the forehead muscles. The muscles that are directly on the sides of the eyes and underneath. You can tell that the actors are really giving a stellar performance, but the technology just cannot keep up. And this is just a risk of the medium, right? It is inherent to video games as an art form.
Yes.
If you pursue this hyper-realistic graphical fidelity, see Detroit Become Human, it will never approach live theater or film. That's not a con, that's just reality, and that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but it is an inherent risk, you know? Again, and the reason that I say bright lights cast long shadows is the rest of this game, the acting, the writing, the set direction, the blocking of the scenes, everything else is really, really stellar. Yeah. So when these little tiny things pop up, you know, it's like this scene is so phenomenal. Why am I looking at their eyes so much, though? What's going on here, you know?
Yeah, and I think because the game, it's a fantasy game, right? Like it's in a fantasy setting and all that stuff, that they can get away with some of those wonkier bits here and there. You know, it's kind of similar to what I said with Yakuza, where if you play the old Yakuza games, you can tell at certain points that they're reusing the same animations from like the PS3 era. But does anybody really care? No, because that's not really what's meant to be criticized here. You know, like this isn't like a super ultra realistic video game anyways. So they don't have to get everything right 100% of the time. And that's perfectly fine that they don't, because again, the game has such a striking look to it already and has like a really well-defined art style that is consistent throughout the game, that it's okay if like a couple of animations look a bit stock or certain bits look a little weird. It's okay, you know? It's not the end of the world. It's a very minor issue, in my opinion.
Cannot stress enough, we are not saying that this is a bad thing and it's a knock against this game. Not at all.
Yeah, I think art style it like tops everything. Like it doesn't necessarily matter how realistic something looks. As long as it has a really nice, well-defined art style, you will be just fine. Like a prime example, Wind Waker. You know, I love Wind Waker's art style, and that kind of precedes any sort of realistic attempt at Zelda they've done after with like Twilight Princess or whatever. Like I think Wind Waker looks better and has aged far better because of it. And I think Expedition 33 will age very well as well, due to its incredible art design.
If you've seen this game shared online, you've probably seen the character customization. That's a fairly prominent part of this. You can dress up your characters in different hairstyles and different clothings. You can argue, actually, that this is diegetic based on something that happens later in the plot, which I think is very, very cool. This isn't for me. Like, I'm not mad that it's here, but I don't really engage with this too much. It breaks the fiction for me. Like I'll mess around with a couple of hairstyles on CL or Mael. I think I gave Gustav a different outfit, but some of them are pretty silly. And again, I mean, for me, they break the fiction. There is an option in the options, appropriately enough, that forces default character designs in cutscenes. So you can, if you really want to, you can go crazy with some of the goofy outfits, like wearing a baguette on your back and sunglasses. But then the cutscenes where the drama happens, where the narrative fiction happens, that'll revert automatically to the stock character designs. I think that's a really cool feature, the best of both worlds.
Did they add that later? Because I do not remember that option.
I'm not sure. I just know it's there now. I don't remember when it came around.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's cool that they added that there. And yeah, the little costumes are neat. But yeah, I didn't really mess with them either. Like, I'm not really somebody who likes messing around with customization of characters in general anyways. It's one of those things that it's almost kind of funny, where it's like the story is so like sad and emotional and serious, but like in the middle of it, they're like playing dress up, But I think I think that's just the nature of RPGs in general, usually. Like a pretty serious narrative with, little lighter things here and there, but no big deal.
I am glad that they added that as an option. I don't mind that it's there. It's just very distracting to me.
Yeah.
Especially with some of the outfits that you can unlock are just so silly. And there was this big, not scandal, but there was this big discussion about the penis jiggle physics on one of the swimsuit models. I don't know which one.
I didn't see this at all.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. I want to say it was a character named Verso. I'm not 100% sure though.
I'm gonna look at this. I'm just looking at it on Reddit.
Another thing, while you're checking that out, another thing about this game that we will talk about as we go through, the distinct level biomes are really diverse, and I said distinct already, so I don't want to repeat it. They're very nice. They're all very unique. Each level, each set, so to speak, gives you a different vibe. It comes with different music. It comes with a different environment. It comes with different monsters. They do a really good job of sort of progressing you through this story while keeping the drama of like a stage play alive. It almost feels like the lights go down and they do a quick set change, just in video game form.
Yes.
Love it.
Yes. And it doesn't like fall into like that JRPG trope of like the typical locales. Like sometimes it does a little bit, but I think it does enough unique things that it doesn't really have to be like, oh, we got to go to like the water area and now like the fire area. It doesn't really do that. It allows sort of the world to just kind of be its own thing, And yeah, those penis physics are interesting.
Notably no
French.
sewer level. Yeah, right.
Yeah, no sewer level. Thank God. I think that was enough to give the game an 8 out of 10 at the very least for me.
Mechanics. So you had mentioned that you had some problems with the mechanics, and I am curious as to where that comes into play.
Sure.
This is a blend of sort of 90s and early 2000s JRPG and modern third-person action games. It is turn-based, but there is a heavy emphasis on dodging and parrying.
Yes.
So why don't we start there? Why don't we start with the marriage of turn-based combat with parrying?
So really, when it was first shown, I think everyone was comparing the combat system to Persona 5 because it had that sort of a look to it.
Which was a noted inspiration from Guillaume Broche.
Yes. I mean, Persona 5 has been such that's another sort of like generational JRPG. I still need to play all the way through that, but that's another topic. But I see the influence there, right? And trying to do the parrying and the dodging. I see them being influenced by Sekiro on that. I also was making comparisons to like Lost Odyssey or even like the Paper Mario games where they do sort of that sort of it's like almost like a trick to keep people into like turn-based combat is have like button timing kind of puzzles or whatever, so people will stay more invested and that kind of a thing. And that's not inherently bad. I have nothing necessarily against it. It was just my issue was that like the parrying and the dodging is fine, but I just don't like how the combat sort of expects you as the player to use that as sort of like your defense. Because if you ever look at the stats...
Oh, interesting.
Because if you ever look at the stats for the other party members, I noticed that for most of them, defense was really low compared to everything else. And it almost felt like it was intentionally made to be really low so that you could get good at the dodging and the parrying and everything. And I can understand that. And thankfully this game has like, like easy, hard difficulty settings, so you can kind of set it to how you want. And at a certain point, I did not get to the story mode because I was just really not... I just never really got a feel for the parry or the dodge at like the normal difficulty. Just, okay. I don't know, it could have just been me. Could have been a skill issue on my part. But it was something that I just thought was a bit annoying, and how... like I was trying my best to bump up their defense, but it never felt like it was really working. And like a lot of your characters, even later on, despite how high of a level they are, they'll die in like 2 hits. So it's like you have to get good at the dodging and the parrying. And there are definitely benefits for that. But just to an extent, it did frustrate me a little bit because there's not really any tanks. There's kind of one, which we'll get to.
Sure.
But it was just one kind of issue I had with it. Is like, I don't mind the dodge and parry mechanics, but I think it kind of punishes you if you're not really good at them.
Well, first of all, you're going to invite many a keyboard warrior to come into my mentions and tell you to get good, thinking that maybe I said it.
Yes, I beat it on story mode, but like, hey, if they come at me, I'll talk to them. No problem.
It's interesting that that's why it's a con to you. For that precise reason, I like it.
That's fine.
When you had mentioned that it feels like a trick to get you engaged in turn-based combat, and then followed it up with, it's so reliant on that. When I think of like, I was thinking to myself, and not listening to you speak, obviously, I was thinking, what's a trick to get people interested in turn-based combat? And I thought of Super Mario RPG, where they do something kind of similar. You can do a quick little like block whenever enemies attack you. That very much is optional. You really don't have to engage with that. And
exactly.
I don't know that I would call it a trick, but I can see it being described as such. Here, I think the sheer fact that it is so imperative that you do it, or at least, try to, especially with the dodging, I don't know, that makes it feel a little bit more special than a trick, a little bit more intentional. I really liked it. I'm team parry or bust. I'm parrying. I don't even think about the dodge a lot of the time. That's not true. I dodge whenever I need to. But
yeah.
What's cool, though, is this game, if we talk about the builds for this game, and we'll get to like Pictos and Luminas in a second, the gameplay strategy of this is largely balanced on attack and defense, where the defense is, it's not stats, like you said, it's active mechanical skill. You've got to parry, you've got to dodge, you've got to jump. And the game plan for attacking your offensive is not mechanical skill, it is stat-based. That's the traditional, RPG elements. Your player builds incentivize high damage, and that's all through builds. So you've got that nice balance of, mental strategy and physical skill. I was a big fan. There is a part of me that wished that buffs and debuffs were a little stronger. They are in here. Buffs are more present than debuffs, I think. They're okay.
Yeah. The debuffs they have aren't really, at least from what I remember, they didn't really help that much.
They can. They can. If you stack enough burns, if you mark an enemy, that can be devastating.
True.
They're not as powerful and useful overall as some other JRPGs.
Yeah.
All I'm trying to say is the offensive strategy is very much geared with no matter who you're playing as deal the most damage possible. Yeah. And some people might say, well, yeah, that's the point of all of them. That's I forget what I was listening to. Somebody on another podcast was like, I don't need any of those debuffs. The only debuff I care about is debuffing their HP to 0.
That's funny.
And it's like, yeah, sure. I mean, that's true. That's how I approach Pokemon. Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Fire Slash, and Cut. Yeah, that's all my Charizard ever needed.
Exactly. It's interesting because in the attack, it does have the like sort of the Lost Odyssey thing where when you attack, if you hit the button at the right time, you'll do some extra damage. And there are certain attacks, certain like multi-string attacks. If you don't hit A, it will cancel it entirely. Where it's like, oh, it's like a 7. Like it'll do 7 hits, but if you miss the A, it'll like do like 2 hits, kind of a thing.
I don't think I ever. Are you sure?
Yeah. It was a character we'll get to later. When we get to that character, I'll remind you. But I mean, he was the only one that really had that, and yeah, it is more based on the stat thing. And I wasn't necessarily implying that how they handle the parries and dodges here is a quote-unquote trick. I was implying that there are, other games, like, say, like when Yakuza went RPG, it's like something that they do that's just kind of like almost kind of gimmicky, I think. Like this game, I see the Sekiro influence with the parry and dodging, but also, like, I like Sekiro, but I'm not very good at it. So,
sure.
Yeah, but I was able to... Once I bumped it to the lighter difficulty, I just thought the parry and the dodge window was better for like my skill set, and I was able to get through the rest of the game. I felt on the harder or even the standard difficulty, I just thought the windows for parrying and dodging were just a little bit too small. It's just a personal thing,
You had mentioned Lost Odyssey. The attack system here was a bit inspired by that.
Yeah.
It is much more obvious when you need to press A here versus when you need to pull the right trigger in Lost Odyssey.
Yes.
It's still to me, this battle system in terms of the attacking sits firmly between Lost Odyssey and Legend of Dragoon for me, where it's like, I like it a little more than Lost Odyssey, but it doesn't have the satisfaction that the additions in Legend of Dragoon have, where each and every one is different, and you've just got to master everybody's timings, and you get to see all the cool animations. That is one where if you mess up a combo, it drops immediately. I will say that.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
This game, in addition to that, you can also shoot, and shooting, as well as your special skills, all use AP. Yes. Every turn, your characters all start with a certain amount of AP, and you can use some buffs and whatnot that you equip outside of battle to get more. Each turn, you're going to replenish 1, unless you've got some buffs on, and attacking will generate AP. Skills use AP. Shooting, 1 shot, 1 AP. There's always this balance to consider. Do I want to do a lot of shooting and then just attack once I'm out of AP, or do I want to save my AP and build it up across a few turns to really unleash some big level 9 AP skills?
I really liked that aspect of the combat. I thought that was...
me too.
As you said, with that strategy of, should I just shoot the enemies now or save it up for some of my more stronger attacks as you progress later in the game? And the game tries to throw some interesting twists on it where it's like, oh, there are certain enemies where anything but a shooting will, like, say, a normal attack, they'll, like, dodge it 90% of the time. But if you shoot them, it'll always hit. So it's one of those, like, oh, I can, focus on them. Or certain enemies will have, like, weak points. And if you, like, shoot the weak point, it'll do a bunch of damage or even perimeter damage around the other enemies as well. So you kind of learn to balance that. And also with your turn order, where some characters, you don't mind if they shoot because... say their AP attacks aren't as good as some other characters. So it's like, oh, I'll have them below the AP, and so when I get to this other character, I'll build up their AP so they have enough strength to do like the big attack that wipes everybody out. So yeah, that little bit of strategy that involves, balancing the projectiles with your normal attacks and your magic attacks, I thought was really nice. I really enjoyed that. And that was a way, I think, of keeping the battles fresh in a way that I found more kind of exciting. It was like, oh, what am I going to deal with here? Like, how does this, like, the cause and effect thing, like, if I do this, it'll cause this to happen, that kind of thing.
Especially with how much synergy there is between all of the characters and how heavily you're incentivized to really break the damage barrier, which you do have from the beginning. There is a 9999 damage barrier. You eventually get a Pictos to take that away. And speaking of Pictos, let's talk Pictos. Pictos and Lumina are the sort of binding duo that create your character builds. Now, there aren't character builds like you would expect in a traditional JRPG, like Blue Mage. There is kind of a Blue Mage, but there's not like a mage, a fighter, or anything like that. It's not quite that divided and I don't want to say nuanced, but divided. You are still largely encouraged to have everybody pushing damage. But
Yes.
the Pictos and Lumina system can help create some builds within that. The way it works, it's kind of similar to Final Fantasy IX in a way, wherein your Pictos, you can equip up to 3 at a time. They will give you special abilities, like one will give you +1 AP on perfect dodge once per battle. One will give you +3 AP to all of your party members upon this character's death. One will, I don't know, add 20% chance of adding a burn if you shoot an enemy. Things like that. After 4 battles, I think, 3 or 4 battles, you learn that Pictos. And where this is different from Final Fantasy IX is once a Pictos is learned by one character, everybody else has access to it, and they can equip it by using Lumina points. This is, I mean, I keep using Final Fantasy IX. This is just like the AP in that game.
Yeah.
Every Lumina is going to have a cost, 1, 4, 5, 10, 15. And as long as you have the points, you can equip that. And as long as it's learned by any one character, the whole cast can use it. The one con to this system is there's just an overabundance of choice, and it can be overwhelming. Very early into the game, you're going to have like a full page and a half of all of this stuff, and there's just so much to look at that it can be a bit overwhelming. On my second time through, I was like, okay, I'm used to this now, but I'm thinking back to my first time. There was a long stretch of the early game where I just ignored it because I was like, this is a lot to look at. I need to just, and I'm doing okay in battles. Because I'm just so good at parrying, but not really. But it is a lot.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't think, the characters necessarily are specific like classes, but they do kind of have sort of defined roles. Like it's like in the story, it's like, oh, this character is supposed to be like this type of a class. But yeah, as you said, you can sort of change the builds of them to kind of mold them to how you like. And that's the Lumina stuff. It reminded me a lot of Lost Odyssey as well. Like, say when it's like the mortals gain the skills that they have by leveling up, right? And then
that's true.
And then
I
you can
forgot
pass
about that.
those on to the immortals and kind of like link them. This reminded me a little bit of that as well, especially at the end of the game where I was trying to like boost my character so I could be strong enough for the final part, like looking through everything and seeing what I could do to sort of not necessarily min-max, but like get everybody as strong as I could. It reminded me of Lost Odyssey when near the end of the game I was going to grind so that I would get the right skills, like attach them to the mortals, they would level them up and then pass them off to the immortals. It has a similar sort of idea where certain characters, like you put the Lumina on them and then they can, like through battles, get better at it and then pass it on to everybody else. So, and yeah, I liked the system. I thought it was really good. But yeah, as you said, way too much abundance of choice, especially when a lot of them do very similar things.
Yeah.
To the point of like looking at that list, it's like you could probably cut like a third of those out and still be just fine.
Maybe so. And the abundance of choice is mainly just a visual thing. It can feel overwhelming. I'm not mad that they're there. And it's cool because it makes playthroughs feel a lot more unique. You know, you can really get to different builds. And while, yes, I do stand by what I said before, you know, at the end of the day, it very much is, this guy's kind of a blue mage and he deals damage. Mael is a fencer and she deals damage. Lune is kind of a mage, but she deals damage. You know, it comes down to debuffing the HP stat to 0.
Exactly.
But there are enough ways to build characters with very neat and interesting synergies that you might not expect. For example, one build that I've got going right now that I really like is one of my characters has a skill that immediately kills them upon a battle starting. They just immediately fall. What's cool about that, though, is I have other skills equipped that when they die, one, the enemies automatically like take a bunch of damage and get a bunch of stacks of burns, because burns can stack in this game, which is cool.
And burns are like the most powerful debuff in the game, at least from what I remember.
2, when they die, the rest of the cast that's on the field, my guys, get like an extra +4 AP. So yes, I do need to revive them, or I could, which I haven't done this yet and I kind of want to, I could just equip a Pictos that says the first time you die in battle, you're automatically restored to 100% health. do it once per battle, but it happens every time. I could just do that. So now suddenly everybody is buffed to hell and the enemies are burning. They don't know what's going on. And I send them to hell. I debuff their HP to 0 because of that one build is just so cool. A lot of stuff like that can be done. Things that you just, you know what this feels like to me? And I thought of this whenever another character was introduced. We'll talk about that soon. But a lot of this does feel like card game rules. You know, a lot of if-then statements, which I think you said earlier. Lune and a character named Ciel in particular very much remind me of trading card game rules in terms of how their battle systems work. But a lot of these synergies that you can set up function on if-then statements. And I just get, you know, I remember setting up strings in Yu-Gi-Oh! That just set off all these crazy combinations to get me tons of life points and monsters and send my opponent to hell. I really like that. I like how strategic this feels. Even though, yeah, you do have that mechanical get-goodery in the dodging and the parrying. There is that, and that's a nice little balance, but you can get fairly creative with a lot of this. I can't stop singing the praises of it. This isn't my favorite battle system. That still belongs to Final Fantasy X too, but this is up there. It is up there. It is really good.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of that customization, it almost reminded me more of like, you know, how Western RPGs are, where they give you a lot of different options to do different things. So that might have been a little bit of an influence there.
Yeah, perhaps so. Let's now talk a little bit about the music and the sound design. So this was composed by Laurien Testard. Really interesting background. They found him just through some Discord posts. It may have been Reddit. I think it was Discord.
I thought they found him on SoundCloud.
Well, he posted his SoundCloud.
Okay.
And it was like an indie game forum, subreddit, Discord, or whatever. And he would post his tracks, and that's how the Sandfall team found him. Really, really cool. He has said, Testard has, that he tried not to take too much inspiration from other sources, which, like, he also says something a little bit later about how, like, French culture and French music just seeped into him because he heard it. I don't think he meant that. I'm not criticizing the man's English, but you can't just decide not to take inspiration from stuff. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, exactly.
But he did say that he's a huge fan of Joe Hisaishi, the composer for Studio Ghibli, and Koji Kondo, specifically his work on Zelda. Those are two, like, noted influence of his.
Yeah, I absolutely hear the Koji Kondo from Zelda. And it's funny, the Hisashi, because currently I'm playing through Ni no Kuni 2. So I can definitely hear some of the comparisons in each of those soundtracks as well.
Yeah, and those are two phenomenal reference points if you're going to take inspiration from any two. If you're going to choose who to be inspired by, like, you could do a lot worse than those two.
Exactly.
What did you think of the soundtrack overall?
I really liked it. I thought it was fantastic. It was pretty diverse as well. Because, you know, you do have your big kind of sweeping orchestral moments, but the tunes that stuck out to me were when you went to the gestural beaches, which are like kind of like side areas where you kind of do random stuff. The tunes there really struck me because they were kind of like a lot more like upbeat and kind of like lighter in tone. You know, and those were the tunes that I still think about, really, are like the gestural beach tunes. But the rest of it, yeah, is just fantastic.
You mentioned, like, feel like it doesn't fit. I don't know where else this could fit appropriately enough.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say it here. This isn't related to music. But they did put a lot of Easter eggs in this game, a lot of them. And it's really fun to find them. There's an Easter egg for Final Fantasy VII's logo. There is an Easter egg to that Garfield breakdancing meme, you know?
Really?
In the Gestural Village, yeah. They put in one NPC, like, just sitting in a fire, and if you talk to him, he just says, "This is fine." There's a lot of that in here. And it's not so much that it becomes, like, self-referential and too, like, self-parody. It's just every so often you find it. It gives the feeling that they were having fun when they were making this.
Yes.
And I can really appreciate that. They're, you know... if I can be convinced that the dev team and the designers and the writers were having a good time, that does a lot for me as a player. It does a lot for me in terms of like, yeah, I like this. It's like finding that random, in Disco Elysium, where the hood at?
Does it really have it in that?
Yes.
That's awesome. Another reason why I should just play that game already.
Phenomenal game. Yeah. But yeah, it's stuff like that. It's really cool. Anyway, not related to music, but yes.
But you can tell when I'd said earlier that the game has soul. It's like, yeah, you can tell this was a passion project, that the people making it, really wanted to make it. And yeah, having that stuff definitely adds to that.
The soundtrack, back to the soundtrack, heavy use of strings, accordion, and guitar. Mm-hmm. Those are like, overall, if you're going to pick some primary instruments, I would probably say it's those. Other instruments used throughout, you can hear synth patches, you can hear distorted guitar, you can hear saxophone, you can hear various kinds of electronic manipulation of the voice, things like talk boxes and auto-tune and things like that to give different kind of vibes. It's very, as you said, Thrak, it's stylistically diverse. Not like, I don't want to... It's not so diverse that you can't tell different tracks are from the same game, but it's cool that you get these intimate sort of Parisian cafe folk melodies alongside of the bombastic battle theme, alongside of lo-fi beats to chill and parry to, and then you get Minoko's theme, which is just tenor saxophone going crazy, and then there's even some stuff that sounds a little prog rocky.
Yeah, there was a couple prog moments in there for sure.
Voice is used pretty heavily here too. French lyrics primarily. It does include some English and some fake language, which gives me some like Big Near vibes. There's a track called Linen and Cotton, for example, which is one of my favorites in the game. I tend to like the more intimate stuff than the big sweeping orchestral stuff. That, to me, it just works so much more.
Yeah, because I think at the end of the day, this is much more of a intimate game as far as like the story is. So those songs, I think, hitting you more is probably more of like the intention. Like it doesn't feel as big and sweeping as it like presents itself at times.
I was looking through some Reddit threads because I do serious research for this show.
Of course.
And I saw some people that said that they were native French speakers, or at least they were claiming to be. I have no idea if they are. Anybody can just say anything on Reddit and it doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm choosing to believe that these people are telling the truth.
Let's humor them and say that they are.
And they said that they looked at the French lyrics. They said that they are like not straightforward at all and extremely cryptic, but they sound pleasing phonetically to the ear. Mm-hmm. And, you and I can't judge the French stuff, but we can judge the latter. And this is an aspect of music that I think about anytime I hear a language that I don't know, but I'm hearing it, in the tune. The voice itself becomes an instrument. You think about this in opera a lot, especially when you're first exposed to it, especially if, you're like me and you don't speak French or Italian or German very well. The voice becomes an instrument, the musicality not just of the voice itself, but of the language, of the cadence, the consonants, the vowels, the articulations of the D's, T's, and P's, things like that. They can be heard in a way that's not often immediately apparent to like our native language, like English, which isn't to say like it is there, but I would venture to say you and I, well, maybe not you and I because you and I do have background in music, but the average person doesn't hear it that way unless it's pointed out to them because it's the native language. They hear the words, they know the meaning, they recognize those patterns, whereas somebody from, I don't know, from France or from Italy that doesn't speak English, they hear it and they hear the musicality of the way words sound, the ups and downs of intonation and the beginnings and ends of the articulations of words. It's very cool. It's something that I love. I'm glad that I don't speak French because, because you can hear a lot of the characters' names throughout, and I feel like I might find that a little cheesy if I knew what they were saying. They're not, to be clear, they're not actually talking about the Gustav and the Verso. It's, those words mean things, but still I hear that as an English speaker and I'm like, are they singing about our guys? Is this a theme song? What are we doing?
Yeah, it's possible.
It's great. I really like it.
Yeah, and even in English, there have been numerous instances of people like writing English words that like the lyrics don't make a lot of sense when you read them, but phonetically they sound really good with the music as well. And like I've always been a fan of like French being sung, I've always thought French is like the best sung language. Like I've listened to quite a bit of Sergei Gainsborough. There's a French Canadian band I really like called Harmonium. They have a really cool album that's about like the 4 seasons and then making like a 5th season. And like it's a beautiful kind of like 70s proggy folky kind of a record. But I've always loved the way French sounds when it's sung, just the way it kind of rolls off the tongue. I think leads naturally to being a very beautiful language when you sing it. So this having a lot of that French stuff I really enjoyed as well. So, and yeah, it's just a gorgeous soundtrack like all the way through.
Have you ever heard of that Italian song that was created to sound like English? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Maybe.
I just looked it up on YouTube. It's Adriano Celentano. I cannot pronounce the name of the song. Prison Colinen Sin 9 Q Soul. It's like, he's this Italian guy in the 70s. He's a musician. He wrote a song in gibberish to sound like English. And I swear it's so funny. I remember finding this in middle school. If you listen to it just passively, you can swear the man is speaking English just randomly.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's so cool, and it demonstrates that musicality of language. It's wild, dude.
Yeah,
I encourage everybody to.
I'd like to listen to that. I don't think I ever have.
Adriano Celentano. He's like doing a whole bit in front of what looks like a studio audience. It's crazy. It's so cool. But yeah, this OST, really strong. The character themes themselves weren't quite as strong for me. I did like them, but again, those intimate moments that are set dressings whenever story beats are happening or whenever character relations are being developed at the campsite, to give an example of what I mean, those moments where the music is very much in the background, that is always whenever I started perking up more and appreciating what was going on. There is no shortage of really fantastic music in this. And you know what I appreciate too, and what this has got me thinking of, is, I've talked on the show before, I have a background in music. I have a master's and a DMA in classical music. And, so I would never call myself an expert anymore because I don't actively practice, but at one time I was. At one time I was at the top of the field, comparatively. And
proud of you.
This soundtrack, thank you, this soundtrack is done by somebody that doesn't have that formal education. And I just can't stop thinking about how amazing human beings are, and 2, how many phenomenally talented people must be out there. Talented through hard work, let me be clear, not just, I hate the phrase God-given talent. It's so dismissive. Talented people through hard work that we will just never know of, It also, there's that meme that always goes around of, it's like a newspaper comic of a dishwasher, and, it's been memed over to say, sorry, bro, I hate to break it to you, but we all are well-versed in hidden and esoteric knowledge, these people are all around us, and we will never know because of things like credentials and, people just never giving a shot. And the smartest person could be working at the Taco Bell down the street.
Yeah.
People are so goddamn amazing, and things like this get me so hyped up about it too.
Yeah, and also I think it's capitalism. Not being able to financially support yourself in order to realize these talents that you have can also prevent that stuff from happening.
That's a huge part of it. Yeah.
And to your point about naturally God-given talent thing, I think to a degree, when we're all born, there is something that things we are naturally better at than other things, but in order to actually see those through, you do have to work at them. You know what I mean? It's not like everybody's born they have a virtuosic talent at something.
Oh, of course.
As we said, I have a music background. I was a drummer for many years, and I found when I had first sat down and started playing, a lot of like the basics of drumming I've found came very naturally and easy to me. But when it came to a lot of the harder, like rudiment technical stuff, that definitely took woodshedding to get better at. So,
of course, I don't mean to suggest that aptitude doesn't exist. I remember going through my ed degree, one of the last things that we had to do in like an educational psychology class, or no, it was something to do with music. I don't know. But we, took and administered these aptitude tests, admittedly to our collegiate peers. So like it was far from a real environment, but it was these things that you can give to children, administer to them to see if they've got rhythmic aptitude versus like tonal aptitude, things like that.
Yeah.
That's definitely there. I'm more so talking about like, whenever I was auditioning for my master's and hearing people in my family say like, well, I wish I could do that. You've got a gift. God gave you a gift. And it's like, no, actually, I spend like 2 to 5 hours a day practicing. The gift is from me. I made this. Look at this here. I made this for you,
If anything, the gift that you get is the desire to work at it and get better at it.
Sure. And, again, like you said, capitalism, a lot of that comes down to nurture as well. Breaks my heart to know there are a lot of really talented musicians that never discover it because they didn't come from, a family with means. Yeah. Classical music is a prohibitively expensive field and hobby. So there are plenty of people, I'm sure, that would be phenomenal musicians that just never get a chance. It's sad. But to bring it back to Clair Obscur, Laurent Testard did amazing work, and he's showing, I will tell you, the man with 3 degrees, you don't need one. You don't even need one to do phenomenal work.
I've worked in my day's work. I don't have any sort of like musical degree. I have some formal music education, but not a lot. And yeah, I worked with people of all ilks, like people who have full-on music degrees and people who have nothing. And what I learned was really the skill comes from like the willingness to actually like get better at the instrument, and like when you're in a band situation, like being able to communicate with everybody so that you're like creating a real piece of music. That's where the skill comes in for sure.
All right, so we've talked through the preamble, as I often call it, probably erroneously. That's probably not correct. But we've talked through the visuals, our overall thoughts, music, mechanics. We're about to dive into our narrative analysis of Clair Obscur. If you were tuning in up to this point and you do not want spoilers, you want to play this game for yourself, you haven't got to it yet, now's a good time to jump off. If you are currently playing through this, I can promise you we won't get up to Act 2. We might get up to the end of Act 1. It kind of depends. Definitely not farther than that. And we don't speak so quickly that we're going to, spoil you unless you're like driving and juggling at the same time, which I recommend you not do, as cool as it looks. It's not cool. Don't do it.
Yeah.
It's a little cool. Don't do it, though.
Thankfully, the game, like if you're just doing the story, it's not a super long game, which is another great thing about it as an RPG. I think it's like maybe 40 hours, which I think is a pretty good length for this game as well.
Ironically, I got up to about 33 hours my first playthrough. I did not do all of the side content. If you wanted to watch a game movie, as they're called, all the cutscenes, 7 hours at most. I've seen some that are 4.5. I've seen some that are 7. I trust the longer, just because they usually are more exhaustive. But at any rate, I think now is a great time. If you're going to jump off, feel free. Otherwise, let's take a stroll into Lumiere and begin the journey of Expedition 33 in Clair Obscur, Expedition 33. I don't know about you. I love this prologue. This whole introductory sequence is just fantastic.
Yeah.
We open with shots of the landscape of Lumiere, a sort of alternate or parallel world of France. You see one character who we'll be introduced to in a minute, named Gustav, on a semi-rustic sort of villa that's overlooking a distorted city. It's bent architecture, suspended debris in the air. It's a little bit Tim Burton. It's how I've heard it called by me in other areas.
Yeah.
It indicates above all that we are in a fantasy setting.
Yeah, I also think this game, I mean, because of French, I think it takes a lot of influence from like French cinema as well. And I mean, we can probably get more into that the further we get into the game, but there were a lot of moments that that had that sort of cinematic presentation to it that I thought were just expertly done.
No doubt. I'm not a film guy. I say this all the time. But I keep thinking back to what Lorient Testard said when asked, like, oh yeah, were you influenced by French music? And he said, not consciously, but I've lived in that culture and absorbed it since I was born. So it involuntarily has seeped into me. It's made me, you know?
Yeah.
Paraphrasing, but that's what he meant. Probably. I know him.
Yeah, we all get influenced like that.
We meet Gustav and Maëlle. They're going to be our two characters for the moment. The town is getting ready for a festival of some sort, and Gustav is killing time. He's putting off meeting up with this lady named Sophie. 4 years after not seeing her, we learn that they were in a relationship, and something is about to happen called the Gommage. This is a spoiler for just a couple minutes into the story, but the Gommage is imminent death. People are going to die. And there's an exchange that happens here, and cards on the table, everybody. I wrote this exchange down as soon as I played the game, and wouldn't you know it, Jacob Geller beat me to the goddamn punch, and what does he do? But he structures an entire video around it, and I was like, damn it, I thought I had one thing. I thought I had one thing to myself here. I thought I could do it, but I promise I did. And this is what they say. Maëlle sees Gustav killing time, and she says, if you're going to give someone flowers, you should probably do it before they wither and die. To which he gives the pithy response, the flowers or Sophie? And that kind of frames this, what we're looking at, this gallows humor, this defense mechanism against grief. This game is entirely about grief and loss and the weight of the past and reflective, pensive feelings. This exchange is just, especially on a second playthrough, is so beautiful. This is where you get the combat tutorial with Maëlle. I admit I wasn't the best at writing down the tutorial spots in this game. On the replay on a New Game Plus, you don't engage with the tutorials. They're just kind of in the menu where you can go back and review them. So we're probably not going to call out every tutorial, but this is where you get to do a little duel with Maëlle, the absolute tank of the game, my beloved, my favorite character. She's incredible and was easily the hardest hitting of anybody in the game. Another character named Monoko comes close for me, but Maëlle is just a tank. So much so that they had to nerf her because people were just going insane with her builds.
Yeah, like when I was playing it, I noticed that like Maëlle was just so incredibly strong. And it was so weird because I guess it's just, preconceived biases. You don't expect her to be such a beast. But once you actually start playing with her, like I kept her in the party. She never left the party. There were two characters that once they entered my party, Maëlle was one of them. They never left.
Yeah, I have that sickness where I have to rotate everybody all the time, and that goes all the way back to Pokemon too. I would consistently always have like 2 teams at least going. I'm fair. One of those guys.
Yeah, I'm more of a, once I find like the 3 or 4 people I like, I'm just sticking with them. I'll just stick with them to the very end. That's just the kind of player I am.
It sounds like you're reading off of like your card for a dating show.
What do you mean? No, I'm not.
So speaking of dating, Maëlle convinces you, she takes you over to Sophie. You run across the rooftops. This is a little bit Ubisoft kind of, running across the roofs using the
little
grappling
Assassin's Creed-y. Yeah.
The reunion with Sophie is a little tense, but it's warm, it's receptive, it's awkward, but it's tender. They split up. What we come to learn is that Sophie wanted children and Gustav didn't because, he knew about the Gommage. Hey folks, Future Rick here. I got it backwards. Sophie did not want children. Gustav did. What a blunder. Can you believe it? Anyway, I just wanted to correct the record. Let's get back to the show. Their future was stolen because, the Gommage happened. Mm-hmm. I suppose we should maybe explain what the Gommage is. It is an annual event where this godlike deity that we'll talk about, known as the Paintress, paints a number on a large monument. This year, it's going from 34 to 33. And on that day, it's the same day every year, presumably. On that day, when the new number is painted, everybody that is that age is wiped away. They die. They get wiped from existence. Gommage is a French word that means, as most of these will be, is a word that means to scrub, like to scrub away, to brush away, to exfoliate away. And that's literally what happens. We'll see it coming up. So this is it's a very tense day, and it's so terribly sad that she wanted to bring children into the world. He didn't because and they both knew that this was coming. Terribly sad.
It's one of those things that I feel like in this fictional world, the idea of having children has to be even more complicated of a question because, you know, I mean, it's one thing to bring children into just like our normal world, right? But like this world where like, oh, life is like ticking down by the year every year. And it just creates that conflict of, you know, like, do we bring children into this world knowing that, oh, they're not going to have, like, say at the 33, it's like, oh, if I bring a child into this world, like, they're going to be dead by like 15, right? If we don't ever fix this. So that like emotional weight there is really heavy. And when that happens, they all just kind of, it reminded me of, I think it's like Avengers, like Infinity War or Endgame, when they all just kind of like disintegrate away.
It's exactly like that,
just, like that thing kind of happens. Yeah.
You had said fix this. Every year an expedition goes out and attempts to thwart the Paintress and stop this cycle. It is a perpetual cycle of death, the Wheel of Fate, from whatever literature that's from. But every year, a group of volunteers, it is voluntary, actually. We get to explore the town right now, and we get to hear everybody's like differing opinions on the Paintress and the Gommage and the expeditions. But the expedition goes out every year to try and stop the Paintress. They're all volunteers. Generally, they are people with 1 year left to live. You know, they're going to be Gommaged on the next date of that. They volunteer to spend the last year of their life fighting for a better future. This year is interesting because Gustav is part of this next expedition, but Maëlle has volunteered as well. And she's only 16. So she still has, because the countdown goes down and people age up, typically, she's got, I think, 9 years, they say. Mm-hmm. She still has 9 good years, but she's still volunteering to go on this potential death sentence of an expedition.
And I think she's going because she doesn't have really any family or anybody to like stay behind for.
Exactly. Yeah, she is an orphan. That is mentioned pretty early on. Also very important to who she is. Two quick things that I wanted to mention here. First, the symbolism of color is really nice here. It didn't go as extensive as I had thought, just based on my initial playthrough, initial reactions. But color is used as a symbol, particularly red. Red can mean a lot of things: passion, anger. But here, it largely symbolizes home. Flowers are used too, and what a nice symbol flowers are. I mean, not only a universal symbol for blooming life, but once plucked, that becomes a death sentence. Mm-hmm. Beautiful for the cycle, this perpetual cycle of life and death that Lumiere is experiencing. And flowers here are being used to celebrate. The Gommage is celebrated by a big festival. People get together in the town square. Flowers are everywhere, red and white flowers, wreaths, petals, thrown everywhere.
And also flowers are used in the grieving process as well. Like whenever a funeral happens or somebody passes away, a lot of times people will just send flowers to the grieving family. So it fits in with that theme of grief as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Grieving, celebratory, multifaceted. The second thing that I just wanted to bring up super quick, the voice talent here, the voice actors, really spectacular. They do something that I don't see a lot of games do. They interrupt each other. They talk over each other. They stumble over each other. And that is so well realized. It happens a few times throughout, but here, when Sophie and Gustav meet up for the first time in 4 years, they like cut each other off and they stumble over each other. No, sorry, you go. Sorry, you go. And it is just so fresh. Games don't do this nearly enough. Captures that verisimilitude of what it's like to be in an awkward conversation with somebody that you haven't seen and you don't know what to say.
You know, I'm sorry that... I miss you too.
Okay.
You go.
Yeah.
Like even in like films and TV, like they don't do that as much either. And I think sometimes that's hard to write. You know, it's hard to write down sort of like when people are like interrupting each other and that kind of thing. Like I've seen a lot of like improv, like comedy kind of use that because they can use the awkwardness for comedic purposes. But and I don't know if this interrupting dialogue, if it was written that way or if they sort of allowed the actors to sort of improv the lines a little bit and create more of a natural flow in the conversation. But however they were able to do it, yeah, it creates a greater sense of, you know, realism and ways of like people would be interacting in this type of situation, you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I wonder how much improv versus scripted. I would imagine it's much heavier on the scripted side, but yeah. I don't know for sure. We should say too, by the way, we should call out some voice acting talent. Gustav is played by Charlie Cox, who I was completely unfamiliar with until this game, to be honest.
As far as video game credits go, this is the only thing he's credited for.
He just recently he spoke about this. He in some kind of a panel, he was like, you know, I feel like a fraud, but because people keep congratulating me, but I don't play video games. I haven't played this yet. He was like, yes, my agent just said, do you want to do this? And he was like, yeah, it sounds really cool. 4 hours in the studio, one day, that's it.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I mean, he did a good job. What else? I assume he's done a lot more in like, you know, movies and that kind of stuff because I'm not familiar with his name.
Yeah, I think he's a movie guy.
Let's see. Just taking a gander at some stuff. Okay. Yeah, he's done some like Marvel Avengers stuff and some other stuff I've never seen before at all. But yeah, he's been getting around. But he does a really good job with Gustav in this.
Indeed, yeah. Mael also does a great job. Jennifer English, whose career is just blowing up right now in the best possible way.
And she does have some video game credits. She's in the Shadow of Erdtree Elden Ring expansion. She's even a character in Baldur's Gate 3. Or at least she's Shadowheart. Yeah, so yeah, good for her. I love her performance as Mael. I think Mael, she had like the most... like her character, I think, really was the one that I gravitated towards the most. But I mean, she's kind of perceived as like the main character of the game, so I think it would make sense. But English did such a fantastic job with the voice acting for her.
I'm gonna hold off on what I was gonna say because I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah.
Gustav and Sophie head to the harbor, hand in hand. It's tentative, it's hesitant, but it's necessary. They are at this moment the only comfort in the world to each other. And as the sky's twilight comes, as the rust of the day's end begins to come in, the scene's color fades to monochrome, and we see the paintress stand up. This giant humanoid, clearly, but sort of lanky, gray, disheveled, almost disheveled in the same way that like the character from The Ring looks.
Yeah.
A being that doesn't look like omnipotent and all-powerful so much as it does heavily depressed at all times, but still like wildly powerful.
And the way the hair like covers her face all the time is very Your Ring influence as well.
It makes everybody below look like a diorama, which is just terrific.
Yeah, I love sort of that. It's not really forced perspective with the paintress, but I just love the way throughout the entire game, the way they always like have her like say in the map or in this, like she's always this big haunting sort of just like figure in the sky as you're progressing the game. Like I think most of the time, no matter where you are, you always kind of see her or sort of like the big 33 where she is. So it's always like in the back of your head, this sort of like imposing force. And I think I love that.
She stands here, she's gaunt, she's withered, and she wipes away the 34 and replaces it with a 33. A piano chord reintroduces the scene with color. It's this half-diminished arpeggio that goes up, just tons of tension. And it's a moment where your breath catches, not just yours as the player, but the characters too. And this is where the Gommage happens. At one at a time, everybody that is of age, that is 33, begins to just disintegrate and melt away into dust and rose petals, flower petals of red and white, and float away. And it's heart-wrenching because you see children hugging each other. There's a shot of one young child hugging an older child, burying their chest into the older child because they're orphans now. Who do they have? You see parents holding their child's hand as they disappear, and inevitably, Sophie disappears as she looks into Gustav's eyes for the last comfort of her short life. It's tragic.
Yeah, it's quite a way to create that emotional tension early on, because as you had said before, when you're going through the Gommage and everything's kind of cheery, there is sort of that hanging aura of like sadness because, it's meant to be this day of celebration before something really bad happens. And then to like see it happen, really, it really hits to you how like emotional this whole journey is going to end up being. Especially the way it hits Gustav, because you could tell him and Sophie never really wanted to break up. But I think sort of that impending doom of the Gommage is what caused sort of their rift. But they still really loved each other. And how they behave right before she goes away, you can very well see that.
Right. The last thing that he says to her is, "I'm here. I'm right here." Last minutes of comfort that she ever gets to experience, as she's just wiped away from existence, and he, now effectively widowed, stands alone. There is an aftermath of this. The aftermath is before the expedition goes off that night. Everybody gets, a bit grim, but everybody gets together before they go off to the expedition, have a party. Different people are grieving in different ways. Gustav is mostly in shock. Other folks are getting drunk. You know how it goes. You can do some mini games here if you want to get some points and a new haircut and such. On New Game Plus, you can get a baguette as a weapon if you keep all of your coins from the first playthrough.
Nice.
Kind of neat. But Gustav's sister, Emma, gives a little speech to rally everybody. I don't think we ever see her again.
Yeah, I don't think so. Like, her name doesn't ring a bell to me after this point.
And the expedition sets off across the sea toward the Paintress. They hit this beach. This is about to take us out of the prologue into Act 1. They hit this beach, and immediately you see this old man walk up. He's incredibly sinister and imposing. The cane that he's carrying makes a knocking sound, an echoing knocking sound that just reminds you of the ticking down of a clock. And appropriate, too. He's not speaking. He's clearly 50s plus. And as soon as somebody says, "Who are you? How are you old?" Like, what is going on? He begins his slaughter. He chops the head off of somebody in the expedition. I don't remember their name. Starts shooting these blasts of energy. He's raining biblical levels of destruction and murdering the expedition one by one. And nobody knows what's going on.
Including the player. Like, when this happened, I didn't expect something like this to happen right away. Like, this level of carnage that happens. It's pretty insane, really. And yeah, like, just as it throws the expedition off, it throws the player off as well.
And how is one man causing so much destruction? It's insane. We don't know who this is, but he is a malevolent force that clearly doesn't want to see anybody from Lumiere survive, probably not Lumiere either. And, we're left thinking, okay, well, this is where, have we been sending off our expeditioners to certain death immediately? Is this what's happened? We don't know.
Yeah, it creates a level of intrigue right away. Like, how is this guy older than 33 still alive? How is he able to do what he did? Like, is there more to the Paintress than we immediately see? Like, it hooks you right away. So you're like, oh, I got to see what's going on now.
Even so, we don't even know if this man is connected to the Paintress yet.
Exactly.
This could just be a whole new dude.
Yeah.
We don't know.
It's all that intrigue, that kind of intrigue you need to create early on in a game like this in order to, I think, hook people and keep them interested all the way through.
Gustav blacks out, and when he wakes up, that brings us into Act 1, titled Gustav. He wakes up in Spring Meadows. This is a beautiful, verdant, serene area. Sotto voce cello is brought in, this mournful melody, rushing waters all around. I know we talked about the visual language before. Just beautiful. I love, and it's so the whiplash of going from an absolute massacre on a beach at night to this bright, verdant area with rushing water. It's a lot. You're like, whoa, what just happened? But it's crazy.
It almost creates the idea that it was like some crazy bad dream that happened, you know? Because at first you're like, did that even happen? Is any of this real? But as you find out, it did actually happen.
I'm sure he wishes that it was.
Yeah.
Gustav encounters his first Nevron here. Nevrons are the enemies of the game. If you swap out Nevron with Monster, Ghoulie, in the right area. I'm going to save, I think we're going to do, don't quote me on this, it's not in stone yet, but we've been talking about doing a fourth episode, like a final episode as a roundtable discussion just about the game as a whole. I'm a little bit blanking. I said this on another episode, like that quote that's attributed to Emerson, where he says, I don't remember the books that I read any more than the food that I eat, but in either case, they've made me,
Yeah,
that kind of thing. I've been feeling that lately with books that I'm reading and games that I'm playing. Like I remember the big things. Most importantly, I remember how I felt, but the little intricate plot points are being lost. I have a theory about nevrons, and I think it's based on how close the word is to neuron and how other words are distorted into what we see.
Yeah.
I have a theory. I can't back it up right now. I might save that, but there you go. You get your first little fight there. You also get to see grappling hooks are set up by previous expeditioners, which just reinforces this game. You're going to be going through seeing the grappling hooks set up by the past expeditions. You're going to be seeing their dead bodies everywhere, finding their journals.
Yeah.
This game is insistent, obsessed with confronting the past. Like that's very much the game, like in the game's thesis conversation.
And that this is not the first attempt of I guess the humans, for lack of a better word, to kind of prevent this from happening. And it's so crazy how the further you get into the game, you will start to notice how many expeditions, like how far they made it compared to say where you are. Because there are some that you only see in like this first like early area of the game, and you never see that number again. And then there are some you don't see until like the very end, and it's like, oh, some actually got here. We're able to actually get there. So just to kind of see like your place along all the various expeditions as well. And yeah, the Nevrons, do you want to talk about the enemy designs? Because I really like the enemy designs in this game. I think they look awesome.
Very Dark Souls-esque.
Yeah, it fits with the whole art aesthetic of the game, which, if I remember correctly, it was influenced by a period in France called Belle Epoque. I'm probably saying it wrong.
Probably Belle Epoque.
Epoque, thank you. It was this like little period in like French and European history in like the late 1800s, and it had this very sort of unique, specific art style that you can tell this game is copying from, and to see even the enemy designs taking on that style, I really liked. And yeah, I think all the enemy designs look great. Even like these first kind of, I guess, grunts that you see. Like they're these like kind of big, imposing kind of characters like right away to make you feel sort of weak and not as powerful as compared to everything else. Just even the early guys. And I think it's great.
Yeah, they're tough to describe. You also brought up a good point that's worth mentioning. The first expedition was Expedition 0, then 99, then 98, etc., etc. We're all the way down to 33 now. So no, that plenty have been through here before.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if it's too early to say, but like as you go through the game, one of the things you end up collecting are journals of the other expeditioners. So you get to hear some of the past expeditioners and sort of their sort of trials and tribulations through their expeditions. And a lot of the flags that you see throughout the game that are sort of like your rest point or your level up spots are flags that have been put by the other members of the expeditions as well.
Speaking of expeditioners, we're encountering a lot of them here, speared and slain, bloodied, dead on the battlefield. And we come across a particular bunch of them, and I do mean bunch, just mounds and mounds of them, and we see those of the 33 that died on the beach. And Gustav has a moment where it's just too much to bear. The music becomes reverent, almost church-like, almost holy. Almost, not quite, but very close. He's accepting. He sits down next to one of the dead 33. He puts his pistol to his temple. He's decided. It's done. It's over. But as he's about to pull the trigger, Lune, one of the people that we could have met at the beginning playing guitar, she was also at the expedition party, she shows up next to him.
You do that, we both die.
And for a long time, I thought that they were setting Lune up to be a sort of manic hallucination, or otherwise some sort of deteriorating reality situation of Gustav's mental state.
That's interesting.
Well, think about it. I mean, she only appears after a cut to black. That's when she says, if you do that, we both die. What does that mean? You know, if you kill the mind, if you kill the master, the mind, that means I die too? Yeah. What is that saying? Like, I'm a creation of your mind? I really thought that's where they were going with this.
That would have been an interesting way the game, a different direction the game could have gone. I mean, clearly it does not go that way, as we find out, but that is an interesting way to look at it. I never thought of it that way.
We're going to fight our first boss here, Avec, with Gustav and Lune. Gustav's fighting centers around electricity and building up charges for his arm. He's got a mechanical arm that, you know, lets him harness electricity. And you build up charges by attacking. Lune is your quote-unquote mage. She can float, and she uses these things called stains. If you do an ice attack, you get an ice stain. Fire attack, fire stain. And the stains can be used to further buff the rest of your skills. This is going back to the trading card thing. You know, thinking back to Pokemon cards, you put a little counter on your card. Suddenly now your fire spin does more damage, or you get to flip a coin an extra time. Yeah, very, very cool. I like Lune's moveset a lot.
Yeah, and you can build up 4 of them in sort of this like diamond kind of a shape. And there's one skill she can get a bit later in the game, and that is when you build up all 4, whichever elements that you use, you can then unleash those as like a chain of attacks on enemies, which near the end of the game can be an absolute killer on bosses. Like, she is a character I kept pretty much the whole time as well. Like, I thought she's your main healer. I think other characters can learn heal to a certain degree, but she's the only one that has like the basic, like, oh, heal a person by doing this skill.
Just do what I do and attach the Pictos that immediately kills one of your guys on the start, and then another Pictos that revives other people if your character dies. Yeah. You know? Kamikaze. Fuck it.
But also, her elemental attacks are so good that she is absolutely worth keeping in the party the whole way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she's baller. You know, you beat that boss. No problem. You find your first expedition journal up ahead, like you had just mentioned. We're finding journals from all the previous expeditions. Some of them are pretty funny. Some of them are sad. You also find your first friendly Nevron here. These are so interesting. They are totally devoid of all chroma. Chroma is an in-universe energy in this game. It's a currency. It's also a life force. It'll make more sense once we get into Act 3. But this one, totally monochromatic, devoid of all chroma, not hostile, tired. And you can talk to it. There are quests, kind of like Final Fantasy IX, friendly monsters, where you get these guys items. They give you rewards because they're friendly. You can fight them, but you shouldn't. You can talk to this friendly Nevron, which is striking, and it says that the paintress, it says that it would, quote, never plunge others into darkness. It was painted to bring light. And then he talks about the paintress whenever we bring her up. He says, the thing says, she marked a path that we must walk, but I sit here in darkness. Without light, I can't follow her. And this is the first inkling, which is a good pun, that the paintress has more to her than we know. She's maybe not just this horrific deity.
Yeah. I mean, and also I felt there was more to her character as well when, like, sort of her main pose is her just kind of sitting there, like, crying, like with her hands on her knees, and she's sort of like crying into her arms.
Yeah, an upright fetal position that signifies withdrawing from the world, and protecting yourself from the outside world, because whatever is outside is too much to bear, something that we all experience when it comes to grief.
Yeah, like it gives you the impression that the paintress is just as trapped in this sort of like loop as everyone else is.
And in fact, Sophie says that on the way to the Gommage, and Gustav brushes her off and says, you know, I could never have empathy like that.
Maybe she's a prisoner too, stuck in the same cycle with us. Silly, huh?
Only you could choose empathy at a moment like this.
It's one of the few choices I can make.
I couldn't do it.
It's okay. You don't have to.
Perfect. I love it.
Good stuff.
Up ahead, there's a strange tree, or a wall or something, and it's got writing on it. The writing says, "Took Mael to the weird corals. Head north. Look for a door inside a hut." So that's where they're off to. This is the first time Gustav and Lune are like at ideological odds. You know, Lune follows protocol, rationality prevails, rules are rules for a reason. She says, "This message feels off. Everyone knows the protocol. This is a trap." Gustav, less rigid, leads with his heart and morality. He says, "Protocol doesn't cover every contingency. Was our entire team dying part of that optimal plan, you know?" And again, the conversation, they're interrupting each other, It's so good. But Gustav ends up leaving. He says, "Protocol states never move solo. I'll let you choose which protocol to break," which is such a good line.
Yeah.
I love it.
And again, it's them sort of like handling grief, or in this case, like trauma. Like they've been through this traumatic experience of watching their basically entire party die. And, you know, Gustav is almost just saying, like, fuck protocol, who cares, right? But then Lune is like, no, we have to stick with it because she thinks that's her way of getting through it, is just sticking to the plan.
Yeah.
You know, and Lune kind of she is sort of that kind of character throughout the whole game. She's very, like, you know, trying to play by the rules kind of a character, which I think you would need in this kind of a party.
Totally. So, for today, this is where we're going to end. Still a lot of story to cover. Don't worry, we're still going to go through all of it. Next 2 episodes might be a little bit longer, but that's okay. We're ending at the world map. This is where we'll start next time. Next time, also, we'll get as far into Act 2 as we possibly can, and then the finale will end it. Act 3 is comparatively quite short because it's a lot of side content. That side content, if we do a Part 4 roundtable, which I'm really thinking we're going to do, that's where we'll talk side content. So look forward to that. But for today, this is where we're going to stop, and we'll pick up next time at the world map. I got to thank you for sticking around again. If this is your first time here, if you're a new listener, thanks to Clair Obscure. Hope you loved the show today. Please check out the rest of our catalog. Narrative analysis is what we like to do. And of course, I got to thank Thrak, because Thrak was terrific on Lost Odyssey. Medieval was fun too. And, you know, Medieval's not quite as deep as Lost Odyssey, but it's still fun. And, you know, speaking of fun, Thrak, you're a part of the 3DO Experience, which is a podcast dedicated to the Panasonic 3DO, along with good friend Bill. I've canceled so many episodes I was supposed to do with Bill. I feel so bad. But do you want to tell everybody a little bit about the 3DO Experience if they haven't heard you on the show before?
Yeah, sure. So now for something completely different. The 3DO Experience is all about the Panasonic 3DO, which was a failed video game console in the mid-90s, that despite that failure, it holds a very interesting legacy. And me and my co-host Bill have been trying our best to sort of explore that legacy of the console and its game library, and even looking into what the 3DO did post the console, because they became a third-party publisher for a while. And yeah, it's a fantastic series. We've had plenty of guests on. We're hoping to have Rick of this show on as a guest in the future. So if you guys are interested in games like Gex, Return Fire, or Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, then the 3DO Experience is the place for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I definitely recommend checking it out. Some of those 3DO games are wild.
Indeed they are. And I never would have played them if it wasn't for the show.
As I said, you can also hear Thrak on the Lost Odyssey episodes and the Medieval episode. If you want to check out the 3DO Experience, you can see the links in the episode description. You can find all of their social presence there, as well as how to listen to them. In the episode description, you can also find links to the interviews I mentioned before, as well as links to our stuff on the web. The Discord, which is free, the Patreon, which is not, but if you love the show, you know, we appreciate the support, as well as our presence on Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and the like. Thank you once again to Thrak. Major thank you to Thrak. Major thank you to you, the listener. Can't wait to talk through the rest of this game. With that, we're going to sign off for now and pick up next time at the world map of Clair Obscure. I'm Rick, I'm your host as always. We'll talk to you again next time. See you soon.